Welcome back to The Great Conspiracy, the 9/11 news special you never saw. American Paul Thompson has created the definitive timeline of events related to 9/11. It's drawn exclusively from published reports. Thompson takes almost an hour at the Toronto Citizens Inquiry to list a fraction of the published reports dealing with early warnings.
Then in late August, so according to some news reports from Der Spiegel and Die Zeit, and it's also reported in the BBC and Haaretz in Israel, this is really interesting. Supposedly Israel gives the U.S. a list of 19 terrorist names. So there are 19 people on the flight, and here they're giving 19 names. We don't know if they're the exact same list. But we do know, according to these reports, that 4 of the names are the same, including Nalaf al-Hazmi, Khalid al-Midar, Marwan al-Shihi, and Mohammed Atta. So these are like the big leaders of the 9/11 attack, and here Israel is saying that these people are inside the United States and planning an imminent attack. Then early September, Egypt warns the U.S., saying that al-Qaeda is in the advanced stages of a, quote, significant operation, unquote, against an American target, probably within the U.S. So, you know, just as an aside, remember that virtually every one of these things I've been talking about is talking about an attack inside the U.S. Remember that George Tenet said that all the information they had pointed to an attack overseas.
In the context of this program, it's important to note these warnings are from individuals, agencies, and whole governments who are obviously not in on the plot. It should be observed that in the main, the controversies over who knew what and when about the attacks are diversionary mini-dramas that reinforce the official fiction. What these individuals and agencies and governments discover are plans and patsies being prepared to play their roles.
Even if it's the most charitable explanation, and we say it was only incompetence, that incompetence was so severe. I mean, how many warnings do you need? And not only that, but it was followed after 9/11 by a cover-up. And as it's often said, it's not the crime, but it's the cover-up that, you know, that you end up going to jail for. That, you know, between the incompetence and the cover-up, that alone should lead to impeachment of President Bush and all of his top people.
Speaking of Bush and his top people, the Commission imagines, page 35, that at 8:46, when Flight 11 hits the North Tower of the World Trade Center, neither the President or anyone, quote, in the White House or traveling with the President knew that Flight 11 had been hijacked at 8:14 that morning. Wrong. The Commission imagines, page 39, that as late as 9:30, quote, no one in the President's traveling party had any information that other aircraft were hijacked or missing. Wrong. The Commission imagines it can get away with such claims, even though millions of people saw TV news reports about the hijackings on CNN beginning at 8:48. The 9/11 Commission fails to ask many, many questions. Why, for instance, was protective cover not provided for Air Force One? The Commission makes no mention of the extensive connections between the Bush and bin Laden families. The Commission imagines, and it's utterly right, that the media will fail spectacularly in their duty to notice these and other glaring omissions. The Commission counts on the media failing to be skeptical or to ask probing questions. As columnist Lawrence Martin puts it, you would think that given the presidential record of duplicity, Bill Clinton on Monica, Ronald Reagan on Iran-Contra, Richard Nixon on Watergate, Lyndon Johnson on the Gulf of Tonkin, John Kennedy on the Missile Gap, that journalists might catch on one day, not in America. Martin adds, if media buttons weren't so easy to push, it's a safe bet that the terrorism threat wouldn't get half the airtime. Well, half the airtime would still be billions of hours. The Commission imagines, and it's right again, that the New York Times will devote pages and pages of coverage to the Commission's report without batting an eye at the shortcomings dealt with in this program. Subsequently, scores of New York Times stories quote the findings of the 9/11 Commission as dependable truth on anything to do with 9/11. The Commission imagines, and it's right on the money, that TV networks will air without question and newspapers publish without question this alleged exchange on 9/11 between the FAA's Herndon Command Center and FAA headquarters. I call it the report.
Do we want to think about scrambling aircraft?
Oh, God, I don't know.
That's a decision somebody's going to have to make probably in the next 10 minutes.
Can we hold it right there? Imagine anyone, say yourself, learning of a major emergency. A neighbor calls to tell you your house is on fire. And you say, yeah, somebody's going to have to make a decision about that in probably 10 minutes. The fact is that on the morning of 9/11, there's a good chance that you leaped into action. Millions of ordinary people did. They call family and friends to turn on the TV. Many, I was one, try to get through to loved ones in New York. We find the phone system down. We call others to see if they've gotten through. And they call us. But at FAA headquarters?
Everybody just left the room.
Yes, sir. I've noticed that. When there's a really big emergency, such as we have with the report here, key people just walk out of the room with fishing rods. When we come back, comments about the FAA and the 9/11 Commission report from David Ray Griffin, author of the book The New Pearl Harbor, Disturbing Questions About the Bush Administration and 9/11.